This is a quick video to talk about the upcoming changes in Oura v2. Oura is a stream processing pipeline that subscribes to the Cardano node to get the blocks. It extracts transactions and sends them through the pipeline, where they get turned into JSON payload, they get filtered, and finally submitted into one of the available plugins. For example, it could be a Kafka topic, it could be a Redis stream, it could be even an HTTP webhook. Oura is very good at moving transactions from one system to the other. But what happens in the middle, it's kind of dumb. There's not much that you can do. You can filter specific transactions that match an address or a metadata label or some sort of policy ID in the assets, which is useful in many scenarios, but kind of limited. But what if you could embed custom business logic inside the pipeline itself by specifying a TypeScript function that gets called for each transaction that goes through? Suddenly, the type of work that you can execute inside the pipeline becomes really interesting. With version 2 filters, what you can do is up to your imagination. If you want to fetch the off-chain metadata for each pull registration certificate, or if you want to download the IPFS image from newly minted NFTs, or if you want to parse the datums from the contract of a DEX to, for example, track the liquidity of a particular token, or if you want to perform custom aggregations, as for example, to keep a list of the ownership of an NFT across the whole history of Cardano. This is what a version 2 filter looks like. It's just a normal TypeScript file, and the only requirement is that you export a function called map event. This function has a single parameter, which is the event payload. In the body of the function, you can do whatever you want with that payload. For example, here are the properties of a transaction event, and whatever you return at the end of the function is what will get sent to the next stage of the pipeline. Let me show you a more interesting example. In this case, we're going to be listening for pull registration events and enriching them with the off-chain metadata component. For that, we define our map event function. Here, we will make sure that we're dealing with a pull registration event and not some other type of event. If we return void from this function, Aura's runtime will just skip this record and do anything else. So if we reach here, it means that we are dealing with, in fact, a pull registration record. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fetch from the URL where the off-chain metadata is hosted. For that, we define this function. We can use the fetch API. Everything is async, so await is available. We get the response. We turn the response into a JSON, and then we return what we found along with the URL and the response status. Now, back to our map event function. The only thing remaining is to return our new record, where we will send a reference of the transaction hash where the certificate was found, the on-chain component, which is the stuff that Oura already gives us out of the box, and now we are enriching that payload with the off-chain component. Okay, now let's run the example. For that, we need to start the daemon. We're going to be specifying our configuration file, where it points to the texture code where we have our map event function. When we run this, it's connecting to the relay node. Now it's pulling block data. We're going to leave it running for a few more seconds so that it gathers some actual pull registrations. Okay, that seems like enough. For our example, we are sending the output of the pipeline to a file in our file system. This is that file. You can see that for each line we have a different record. These are the outputs of each of the events that were processed by the pipeline. Let's cherry pick one. For example, this one. Let's put it in a new file so that it's easier to read. And yes, we have what was expected. If you remember our map event function, we were returning something with the hash of the transaction, the on-chain value and the off-chain value, and in our output record we get just that, the hash of the transaction, the on-chain data that it's already provided by Oura out of the box, but now we also have this off-chain object with all of the data that we pull directly real-time from the web when processing the transaction. And that's the end of our example for the main feature in the upcoming version of Oura. You can find an alpha release on our GitHub repository, and you can check out the code in the B2 branch. And I don't know about you, but having a way to react to Cardano transactions using just JavaScript and without any other kind of dependencies, not even a local node, because you can connect to a remote relay if you want to, sounds like a really powerful tool to have in our toolbox.